All right, part two. Um, yeah, that's amazing. That woman was afraid of your lovebirds. We used to have peach-faced lovebirds, and they were the sweetest, harmless things, and just sweet, you know. Um, it's just amazing that someone's going to be afraid of birds. There's a category of that. I'm afraid of birds. I just don't understand it. Um, Fear of animals is the most amazing thing. I don't know what people are afraid of. I just. It amazes me. Well, fear is a strange thing anyway. I was thinking once, and I've mentioned this in another video or two, and I wish I remembered the logic and the reasoning that went through my head. But I was thinking one night, what's the opposite of fear? You know, and most of the time people will say, well, courage is the opposite of fear, or bravery is the opposite of fear. Um, I don't think so. Those I think are responses to fear you know. But somehow I reached the conclusion that the opposite of fear is love. Surprising kind of conclusion. But I mean, I find it that way too. I love animals, and I'm just not afraid of them. I've been really lucky with animals. I mean, I knew a guy who had a hyena. I used to be able to visit the hyena and pet the hyena. What a remarkable creature, you know. I shook hands with that monkey, touched the Black Panther, and other animals I think I've forgotten about. But just I've been so fortunate. But but fear. I mean, unless there's a rabid, angry dog there. Hey, that hate crime thing is ridiculous. You were mentioning that a dog is being charged with a hate crime. That's ridiculous because you're talking about the differences between people and animals. I mean, I don't know animals that hate. I mean, hatred really seems to be um, a human thing. I don't understand hatred. I think it's related to fear and maybe based on fear combined with our ability to generalize, to sort of stereotype and categorize. But there's something about hatred that is so ugly that I mean it really distorts the face and I don't know. I mean, I was thinking about this and somehow the phrase came into my mind that all hatred is self-hatred, maybe projected outward. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but it's sort of rung partially true to me. I have to think more about it. But even then, where do we learn hatred? What would cause us to hate ourselves? You know? I don't know. Hey, and that veterinarian, I mean, if you're a vet, you should expect to be bitten every once in a while, right? I mean, I got bitten by a dog once, real serious bite, almost lost my right hand. Um, I intervened in a dog fight, which one should never do, I could tell you personally. Uh, but I was amazed at how many people wanted to have the dog killed. I was like, no, the dogs were being dogs. I was the fool, you know but people wanted to kill them. I was like, no, how could you want to kill the dogs for being dogs? Uh, yeah, animal suicide behavior. Yeah, they kind of name behavior anything that's not conscious conduct, I think is what they. I took an ethics class and it was really fascinating. I mean, the first series of things that the instructor said was really made up the whole course for me. I mean, the instructor said, well, we have two kind of concepts. We have behavior, which is driven, and we have conduct, which is choice. And we generally agree that we're responsible for conduct, but behavior is sort of out of our control. Someone behaves a certain way because they're driven by their past or whatever number of things, but you're sort of the idea is that you don't really have a choice. You're sort of non-compos mentis or something. And he said if you watch any criminal case, you will always find the prosecution arguing conduct, that the person knew that they were doing wrong and they chose to do it anyway, and therefore they must pay the penalty under the law. And the defense is always arguing behavior. No, they didn't really realize that it was wrong. No, there's factors in their past and their upbringing that mitigate it. That it's really behavior. It's driven behavior that they couldn't help, and so they shouldn't be held responsible for it. But that blew me away when the guy said that. Um, you know, so But yeah, we also have this concept of behavior being repetitive, mechanical, I think, um, um, which also, if we turn ourselves into machines, then we're not responsible. Um, yeah, and I agree with you completely that I also think that a society should be judged by the way it treats the weak. And yeah, if aliens were to come here and were to apply our own standards of behavior or conduct against us, we would fail miserably. It'd be poetic justice, huh? It's like, hey, we would have been nice to you, but look what you're doing to your weak. So we'll treat you the same way. Why not? That's poetic justice, man. Value assigned by desire, where you mentioned we seem to assign value. For instance, if a mother uh, wants a fetus, then we assign it value. Um, yeah. Now, don't we do that a lot? Something that's desired is valued. That's an economic, almost the economics of life. Like, well, this has a market value because we can sell it for a certain amount. I mean, here's an interesting question. Um, if an unborn fetus during the early stages, say, just to make it less controversial, let's say during the early stages of development, um, if it really has no inherent value, then what's there to stop us from selling them? Let's have a market for them and sell them. Now, right away, this would become controversial. People would start to say, okay, this is getting a little too close to slavery, buying and selling potential human beings, right? Um, and we've already seen some people sell their eggs on the internet, or some people can sell their sperm, which is really only half of what it takes to make life. But, even that's kind of horrifying, huh? Um, yeah, see, this is the thing. Even objects, when we produce commodities, they become objects like the TVs, and we sell them on the open market. In a way, trade makes things objects less personal because we send them off. So commerce itself tends to objectify things, um, and yet where would we be without commerce? Um, yeah, it's interesting. That's right. We have no rights. We have rights to protect people against exploitation. We could talk about affirmative action sometime. I think there are a lot of grave misconceptions about affirmative action, anti-discrimination laws. The grave misconceptions that are just supported by the media for years. Um, but in any event, yeah, we don't have any of these protections for animals because, yeah, I think you're right because we're treating them as property, and property can be treated as something we use, like we use an object. Now that we've even alienated ourselves from our tools, which once maybe had meaning for us. Hey, and then, when there was participation mystique, you read some of these old myths where even people's tools, like their weapons, had magical powers and personalities of their own, like the, Arthur's sword or Roland's sword, which, had jewels inside, magic stones and things inside the actual handle or heft. You could put sacred objects in there too, relics and such, to give the sword powers. Uh, yeah, the little white lie that's turned into a negative truth. I love that phrase, man. I gotta think about that. Yeah, yeah. And then we just sort of disfigure animals. And hey, yeah, man. I mean, we're entering really weird times now with some of the genetic manipulation we could do is kind of weird. I mean, hey, Brave New World, and I have to admit to a certain degree of horror at the idea of taking fly DNA and putting it in a potato. uh, I mean, is that superstition or is that just horror? Oh, back to the commercial stuff. Um, One area where we do seem, well, even the art is changing, but art is traditionally where we can look at a human product, even in a commercial world. Maybe in art, we still see it, the mark of the artist, the mark of the human. But even that has become so abstracted now that even art has become object and is, of course, sold on the market for whatever, millions of dollars. Um, um, Rights coming from the creator. I have to think about that. That's a fascinating concept. Um, has implications that I think are very interesting. I mean, where else do you draw rights from? From a creator or from nature or as inherent? Um, Interesting. Yeah, we've objectified everything. Made it. Running out of time. I think I'm hitting most of the concepts. Oh, just a little Greek concept. The Greeks believed that the gods would come down in human form all the time. So when as far as respect for fellow people went, hospitality was to strangers was a real value, and part of the rationale was you never knew if the stranger you met was a god in human form. So it behooved you to be very hospitable. you know, uh, Imagine if we treated the animals the same way. That could be uh, a kind of a god or a force of nature, a powerful force of nature, and should be treated with respect because like I say, we've stripped all even the individuality out of subjectness, subjecthood is probably a better word. Um, I, uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know. Humans, man. Humans, man. We're the weirdest animal of all. Okay, my friend. I'll talk to you later. Good seeing you. Bye.